The station was dying. Outside the thick viewports of Colony Station Vesa, 3 enemy ships circled like hungry beasts. Their hulls were black and dented, covered in old battle scars. They belonged to the Krath Raiders, a group of pirates known across the Outer Rim for one simple rule: leave nothing alive. Inside the station, alarms screamed through every hallway. Red lights flashed on and off, painting the walls in a slow, dying pulse. Smoke drifted near the ceiling vents. Somewhere below, a wall had already collapsed, and workers were still trapped under the metal. Commander Julia Cern stood on the bridge, her 4 thin fingers gripping the edge of the control panel so hard her knuckles had turned pale blue. She belonged to the Vestal, a peaceful species, tall and slender, with soft skin the color of pale sand. Her people were not fighters. They were farmers, traders, scientists. They had built Vesa Stationation as a quiet outpost, a small home among the stars, far from any war. But war had found them anyway. "Shields at 12%, said a voice behind her. It belonged to Toran, her young second-in-command. His voice was shaking, but he kept his eyes on the screen, refusing to look away. "Keep them steady," Julie said, though she knew it was almost pointless. 12% would not last through another attack. The station shook again. A deep groaning sound rolled through the metal floor. Dust fell from the ceiling like snow. Commander Toran said, "The East Wing is gone. We lost contact with 14 families." Julie closed her eyes for 1 second, only 1 second. She did not have time for more. "Get everyone to the lower shelters," she said. "Now. And you? I'm staying here. Someone has to keep the transmitter running." Toran wanted to argue. She could see it in his eyes, but there was no time for that either. He nodded once, then ran to help the others. Julie turned back to the console. Her hands moved fast over the controls, faster than she thought she could move. She was not a soldier. She had never fired a weapon in her life. But right now, the only weapon she had was a signal, a message thrown out into the darkness of space, hoping someone, anyone, would hear it. She had already sent 3 calls for help, 3 calls to 3 different alliances, 3 calls that had gone unanswered. The first alliance was too far away. By the time they read the message, the station would already be dust. The second alliance sent a polite reply. They were sorry. They could not risk their ships over a minor territorial dispute. That is what they called it, a minor dispute, as if the deaths of her people were a small inconvenience on someone's schedule. The third alliance did not reply at all. Now, with the station breaking apart around her, Julie had one option left. A signal she had heard about only in old stories, passed between traders and quiet voices, almost like a myth, a species from a distant, forgotten system, a species other civilizations rarely spoke to, and when they did, they spoke carefully, almost nervously. Humans. The Vestal knew very little about them. Only fragments, rumors, old reports from traders who had crossed paths with human ships and come back with strange stories. "They do not run from danger," one old trader had said many years ago, sitting in Julie's family shop. "They run toward it. They come from a world that tried to kill them every single day." Another had said, "Storms, disease, monsters in their oceans, monsters in their forests, and worst of all, each other. And still they survived. Still they grew stronger. Some called them Deathworlders, survivors of a planet so brutal it should never have produced anything except extinction. Instead, it produced a species that clawed its way to the stars." Julie did not know if the stories were true. She did not know if humans would even answer, but she was out of choices and out of time. Her fingers found the old transmission codes buried deep in the station's memory banks. Codes almost no one used anymore. She typed with shaking hands. "This is Colony Station Vesa. We are under attack. Our shields are failing. Civilians are trapped. We have no military support. If anyone receives this message, please, we need help." She paused, staring at the blinking cursor. Then she added one more line because it felt important, even if no one would ever read it. "We do not know if you exist. We do not know if you care, but we are asking anyway." She hit send. The signal shot out from the station's old antenna, a thin beam of light and sound racing into the black emptiness of space. It carried her voice, her fear, her last hope out toward a system she had never seen, toward a species she had never met. Then the lights on the bridge went out far away, in a system most star maps did not even bother labeling. A small patrol ship called the Iron Wren floated quietly near the edge of human territory. It was not a large ship, it was not even a warship, not really. It was built for scouting, for exploring, for watching the borders. Inside, a young communications officer named Danny Reyes sat half asleep at his station, his chin resting on his hand. The night shift was always slow. Nothing ever happened out here. Then his console beeped. At first he ignored it. Just background static probably. But it beeped again louder this time, and a red light began to blink. Danny sat up straight. What the? He pulled up the signal. It was old, weak, and broken in several places, like it had traveled a very long way, and barely survived the trip. But the translator program managed to piece together enough words to understand. Under attack, civilians trapped, no military support. Please, we need help. Danny's stomach turned cold. He didn't waste a second. He hit the comm switch. Captain, you need to see this right now. A moment later, heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor. Captain Elena Cross stepped onto the bridge, still pulling on her uniform jacket, her short, dark hair messy from sleep. She was not a large woman, but she carried herself in a way that made people stand a little straighter when she walked into a room. This better be good, Reyes, she said. It's an SOS, Captain. Alien signal. Unknown species. It's bad. He turned the screen toward her. They said their shields are at 12%. That was hours ago. Based on the signal delay, they could already be gone. Elena read the message twice. Her jaw tightened. Location. Danny typed quickly. A star map appeared on the main screen. A small blinking dot far beyond the edge of explored human space. Here, Captain. It's a long way out, past the buffer zone. We don't even have a treaty with whoever sent this. Do we know who's attacking them? Signal doesn't say directly, but based on the frequency pattern and weapon signatures mentioned in the distress call, looks like CRA raiders, pirates, nasty ones. Elena's eyes did not leave the star map. The blinking dot felt very small, very far away, and very alone. Another officer, an older man named Chief Marks, stepped closer. Captain, with respect, this isn't our sector. We don't know these people. Command didn't authorize any operation out there. If we go alone. No backup, no support. I know, Elena said quietly. They might not even survive till we arrive. I know that too. The bridge went silent. Everyone waited. Elena stared at the message on the screen. She thought about the words, "We do not know if you exist. We do not know if you care, but we are asking anyway." She had read 100 reports in her career. She had seen alliances turn away from weaker species 100 times, always with the same excuse. Not our problem, not our war, not worth the risk. She was tired of that excuse. Rise, she said finally. Get me a direct line to Fleet Command. Yes, Captain. A minute later, a gruff voice crackled through the comm system. This is Command. Go ahead, Iron Wren. This is Captain Elena Cross. I need authorization for an emergency response mission. Coordinates incoming. There was a pause. Cross. That's outside our patrol boundary. That's not even close to our boundary. I'm aware. You understand? If you go out there, you're going in blind. No allies, no backup. Possibly hostile territory. I understand. Another pause, longer this time. What's out there that's worth the risk? Elena looked at the screen again at the small broken signal. At the words of a stranger asking for help she probably believed would never come. People, Elena said. People are out there. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then finally, the voice spoke again. Command authorizes emergency deployment, sending the Ares Fury to rendezvous with your position. She'll take point on this one. Cross, you'll be riding back up. Danny's eyes went wide. The Ares Fury captain. That's not just a patrol ship. That's a warship, a real one. Elena allowed herself the smallest smile. Good. Then let's make sure it gets there in time. Back at Colony Station Vesa, darkness had swallowed the bridge. Emergency lights flickered weakly along the floor, barely enough to see by. Smoke curled through the air. Somewhere far below, the sound of metal groaning under pressure never stopped. Julius Kern sat on the cold floor, her back against the broken console. listening to the silence where the hum of machines used to be. Turan had returned, refusing to leave without her, and now sat beside her, his breathing shallow. "Did it send?" he asked quietly. "The message it sent," Julie said. "I don't know if anyone got it." Outside, through the cracked viewport, they could see one of the raider ships turning slowly, preparing for what would likely be the final strike. Its weapons glowed a dull orange, charging. Torin reached over and took her hand. Neither of them said anything else. There was nothing left to say. The raider ship's weapons reached full charge. A bright light gathered at its cannons, and then, without warning, the light on the raider ship flickered and died. Julie blinked. "What? What happened?" Torin struggled to his feet and looked through the viewport. His voice came out as barely a whisper. "Commander, something just came out of warp." Julie forced herself up, ignoring the pain in her side, and looked out into the black sky. A massive shape had appeared where empty space used to be, its hull dark gray, lined with rows of glowing lights, weapons already extended and aimed. It moved with a terrible, calm confidence, like something that was not afraid of anything in this galaxy. The three raider ships moments ago, so confident, so eager to finish their attack, suddenly turned in confusion, their formations breaking apart. A new voice crackled weakly through the station's dying comm system. Calm, steady, and completely unafraid. "This is Captain Elena Cross of the human warship Ares Fury, responding to your distress call. Hang on, help has arrived." Julie stared at the viewport, at the massive ship blotting out the stars, at the raider vessels scrambling to escape. For the first time in hours, she allowed herself to breathe. The old stories were true. They had answered. The three crater raider ships broke formation the moment the Ares Fury dropped out of warp. For years, the Kraith had ruled this part of space like kings. They attacked weak colonies, stole supplies, took prisoners, and left behind nothing but broken stations and burned ships. No one had ever come to stop them. No one had ever dared. Until now. On the bridge of the lead raider ship, Warlord Oxgar stared at the massive gray shape that had just appeared on his screen. For a moment, he did not understand what he was looking at. The ship was large, larger than anything he had expected out here, and it moved with a strange, calm precision, like a predator that already knew it had won. "Identify that ship," Oxgar barked at his crew. A nervous voice answered. "Scanning Yark, sir." It's human." The bridge went quiet. Oxgar had heard of humans before, mostly in old warnings passed between raider crews. Stories meant to scare young recruits into obeying orders. Stay away from human space. Stay away from Deathworlders. He had always assumed it was exaggeration. Stories told to keep soldiers in line. Now, staring at the ship on his screen, he was not so sure. "It's just one ship," he said, forcing confidence into his voice. "We have three. Hold formation. We finish the station first, then we deal with this human toy." His crew obeyed, though many of them exchanged uncertain glances. On board the Ares Fury, the mood was completely different. Captain Elena Cross stood at the center of the bridge, her eyes locked on the tactical display, when around her. The crew worked with quiet, practiced efficiency. No panic, no confusion, just calm, steady focus. The kind that only comes from years of training and discipline. "Enemy ships holding formation, Captain," said the tactical officer, a broad-shouldered man named Reyes. Not the same young Reyes from the Iron Wren. This Reyes was his older brother, Marcus, a battle-hardened officer who had served on the Ares Fury for 6 years. "Looks like they're trying to finish the station before dealing with us." "Not happening," Elena said. "Shields at full power." "Yes, Captain." Weapons charged and ready. Elena's eyes moved across the screen, studying the raider ship's positions, their weapon signatures, their movement patterns. She had read reports about the Krath before. Cruel, efficient against weak targets, but sloppy against real resistance. They relied on fear, not skill. "Helm, bring us between the station and the lead raider ship," she ordered. "I want our shields blocking their shot." "Yes, Captain." The Ares Fury moved forward, smooth and silent, sliding into position exactly as ordered. On the station, Julius Kern watched through the cracked viewport as the massive human ship placed itself directly in the path of the raiders' weapons, shielding the station with its own hull. "They're protecting us," she whispered. Toron stood beside her, his eyes wide with disbelief. "They don't even know us." Doesn't matter, Julie said quietly. They came anyway. Back on the raider ship, patience was running out. Fire on the human ship, he ordered. Full weapons. The lead raider vessel unleashed a wave of plasma cannons. Streaks of orange light cutting through the darkness of space, aimed directly at the Ares Fury. On the human ship's bridge, no one flinched. Impact in 3 seconds, Marcus Reyes said calmly. Shields holding, Elena replied, watching the numbers on her screen. Return fire. Target their weapons array. The Ares Fury answered with its own cannons, precise and controlled, striking the raider ship's weapon systems with pinpoint accuracy. Sparks exploded across the raider's hull. Alarms blared through their ship. Direct hit, Marcus reported. Their forward weapons are offline. On the raider bridge, stared in disbelief at his damaged systems. That was one shot, he muttered. One single shot took down our entire forward array. His second in command, a smaller craft named Fesk, looked at him with growing fear. Warlord, maybe the stories were true. Silence. Oxcar snapped, though his own hands had begun to shake. Bring the other 2 ships around. Surround them. 3 against 1 they cannot hold forever. The 2 remaining raider ships moved to flank the Ares Fury. One from the left, one from the right, hoping to catch the human ship in a crossfire. But Elena had already seen it coming. They're trying to flank us, she said. Helm, rotate the ship. Bring our secondary cannons online. Tactical, target the ship on the left first. Take out their engines. The Ares Fury spun with surprising speed for a ship its size. Its secondary weapons array lighting up along its hull. A precise burst of cannon fire struck the left raider ship's engines, crippling its movement instantly. The ship spun helplessly, unable to maneuver. Left ship disabled, Marcus reported. Good. Now the right one. The remaining raider ship on the right tried to retreat, realizing too late what was happening. But the Ares Fury was faster, cutting off its escape route with ease, weapons locking onto its hull. Captain, they're requesting comms, Marcus said, glancing up in surprise. Elena's eyes narrowed. Put it through. A shaking voice crackled through the speakers, translated instantly by the ship's systems. It was Fesk, the raider's second in command, his voice filled with panic. Human ship, we surrender. Please, we surrender. Elena studied the screen for a long moment. Around her, the bridge crew waited in silence. Cut engines on all raider ships, she ordered finally. Disable their weapons remotely if you can access their systems. No one dies today, unless they force it. Understood, Captain. Within moments, the 2 damaged raider ships went completely still, their weapons powered down, drifting helplessly in space. But Oxcar was not ready to surrender. On the lead raider ship, the warlord slammed his fist against the console, fury burning through his fear. Cowards. You would surrender to one ship, one single Deathworlder vessel. Warlord, look at what they just did. Fesk pleaded through the comm, his voice desperate. They destroyed our engines and weapons in seconds. They haven't even used their full power yet. If we keep fighting, they will kill us all. Then we take the station down with us, Oxcar snarled. He turned to his weapons officer. Target the colony station directly. Full power. If we cannot have victory, we will have revenge. The weapons officer hesitated. Warlord, if we fire on the station while the human ship is between us, we risk hitting. I said fire. The raider's ship's remaining weapons began to charge, aiming past the Ares Fury, toward the damaged colony station, where Yuli Turan and hundreds of frightened civilians waited on the Ares Fury's bridge. The tactical display flashed a warning. Captain, they're charging weapons targeting the station directly, Marcus called out. Elena's expression did not change, but her voice sharpened with absolute authority. Full power to forward shields. Move us directly into the line of fire now, Captain. That will take our shields to maximum stress. I said, now. The Ares Fury surged forward, placing itself completely between the raider ship's weapons and the colony station, its shields blazing brightly as they absorbed the full force of the incoming attack. The ship shook violently. Alarms rang across the bridge. Sparks fell from overhead panels. Shields at 60%, Marcus shouted. Hold position, Elena ordered, gripping the edge of her console. Return fire, full power, end this. The Ares Fury's main cannons fired in response. A single massive blast of concentrated energy that tore through the raider ship's remaining defenses like paper. The lead raider vessel shuddered violently, explosions rippling across its hull. On the raider bridge, Oxgar stared at his dying ship in stunned silence. Fire spread across the control panels. Crew members screamed as sections of the ship began to collapse. "Impossible!" he whispered. "We had them surrounded. We had the advantage." Feska's voice cut through the chaos, filled with something close to grief. "You never understood, Warlord. There was never an advantage. Not against them. The raider ship's power failed completely, its lights dying one by one, drifting silently into the dark. Defeated on board the Ares Fury, the bridge slowly returned to calm." Marcus wiped sweat from his forehead and looked at the tactical display. "Captain, all 3 raider ships neutralized. Lead vessel is dead in space. No more threats detected." Elena exhaled slowly, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. "Casualties? None on our side, Captain. Shields took heavy damage, but the hull held." "Good." She turned toward the comm station. "Open a channel to the colony station." A moment later, a weak, trembling voice answered. It was Julie Cern, her voice filled with disbelief and exhaustion. This is Colony Station Vesa. Is it over?" Elena's voice softened, though it remained steady and calm. "It's over. You're safe now. Medical and repair teams are on their way. Just hold on a little longer." There was a long pause on the other end, filled with quiet, broken sounds that might have been crying, or might have been laughter, or perhaps both at once. "Thank you," Julie finally whispered. "Thank you. We didn't think anyone would come." Elena looked out at the wreckage of the raider ships drifting silently in space, at the battered but surviving colony station beyond them, its lights slowly flickering back to life. "Someone always should," she said quietly. "Rest now. You're not alone anymore." On the colony station, Julie closed her eyes, tears finally falling freely down her face. Beside her, Torin let out a shaky breath, gripping her hand tightly. Outside, the massive human warship remained in position, a silent guardian between them and the empty darkness of space, waiting patiently as the first rescue shuttles began their approach. The battle was over, but for Yuli, for Toran, for every survivor aboard that broken station, something far more important had just begun. A new understanding, a new truth, whispered from now on, with respect instead of fear. When the galaxy turns its back, humans do not. Repair drones moved slowly along the outer hull of Colony Station Vesa, their small blue lights blinking in the darkness like tired fireflies. Sparks drifted from broken panels. Twisted metal hung loose where entire sections had been torn open during the attack. But for the first time in many hours, the station was quiet in a different way. Not the silence of fear, the silence of relief. Inside, the halls were full of movement again. Human shuttles from the Ares Fury had docked at every working port, and medical teams moved briskly through the corridors, carrying supplies, treating wounds, and pulling survivors from beneath collapsed sections. Julius Cern stood near the central hall, watching as 2 human medics carefully lifted an injured Vestal worker onto a stretcher. The worker, an older woman named Prena, had been trapped under fallen debris for almost 6 hours. Her leg was broken, her face pale from pain and blood loss, but she was alive. "She's stable," one of the medics said, glancing up at Julie. His name tag read, "Corporal Diaz. We'll get her to proper treatment on the Ares Fury. She'll make a full recovery." Julie nodded, unable to find the right words. She had expected only hours ago that this station would become a grave. Instead, it had become something else. A place saved at the very last second. "Why?" she finally asked quietly. Diaz paused, confused. "Why? What, ma'am? Why did you come? We are strangers to you. We have no treaty with your people. We offered nothing in return." Diaz looked at her for a moment, then shrugged, almost like the answer was obvious. "You sent a distress call. That's kind of the only reason we need." He turned back to his work, lifting the stretcher gently, leaving Julie standing in the hallway, with his simple answer echoing in her mind. On the bridge of the Ares Fury, Captain Elena Cross reviewed the last of the damage reports. The ship had taken heavy stress to its shields, but nothing that could not be repaired. More importantly, no crew members had been lost. For a battle that could have gone very differently, It was as good an outcome as she could have hoped for. Marcus Reyes approached her console, a datapad in hand. "Captain, we've got the 2 surrendered raider ships secured. Crew members are being processed for transfer to the nearest holding facility. The lead ship didn't survive. Casualties on their side. Most of the crew evacuated in escape pods before the final hit. We picked up 11 pods. Warlord Yakar was not among them." Elena nodded slowly. She had not wanted a bloodbath. She had wanted the station saved. Both had mostly happened, and that would have to be enough. "Good work today, Marcus." "Wasn't just me, Captain." Whole crew stepped up. He hesitated, then added, "For what it's worth, ma'am, I don't think anyone on this ship regrets coming out here. Even Command's hesitation back at base. It feels a little foolish now, looking at what we found." Elena allowed herself a small, tired smile. Foolish or not, they authorized it in the end. That's what matters. Her console beeped. An incoming transmission request. She opened the channel and Julius Kern's voice came through, steadier now than before, though still filled with quiet emotion. "Captain Cross, I wanted to thank you again properly, and to ask, may I come aboard your ship? I would like to meet the people who saved us face to face." Elena glanced at Marcus, who gave a small nod. "Of course," Elena replied. "We'll send a shuttle for you." An hour later, Julius Kern stood nervously in the Ares Fury's main hangar bay, Torin close beside her. Neither of them had ever set foot on a human ship before. The size of it alone was overwhelming. Rows of fighters and shuttles lined along the walls. Human crew members moving efficiently in every direction, calm and organized despite the chaos of the last several hours. Captain Elena Cross walked toward them, her uniform still marked with scuffs from the battle, but her posture straight and confident. She extended a hand, a human gesture Julie recognized from old trade reports. "Commander Julie Cern, I presume," Elena said. Uli hesitated, then reached out and gently shook the offered hand. "Captain Cross, thank you. Does not feel like enough, but it is what I have." "It's enough," Elena said simply. "How are your people?" "Recovering, grateful, confused mostly." Julie allowed a small, tired laugh. "We expected diplomats if anyone came at all. Perhaps a relief ship with supplies. We did not expect a warship." Elena's expression turned thoughtful. "When we got your message, we didn't know what we'd find either. Could have been nothing left to save. Could have been an enemy fleet too strong for one ship to handle. We didn't have time to plan for every outcome. We just knew people needed help, and that we were close enough to try. Is that normal for your people?" Elena considered the question carefully. "I won't pretend humans are perfect, Commander. We've made plenty of mistakes throughout our history, more than I'd like to admit. But if there's one thing most of us agree on, it's this. When someone calls for help and you're able to answer, you answer. Doesn't matter if you know them. Doesn't matter what they can offer you in return." Torin, who had been quiet until now, finally spoke. "The other alliances we contacted, they had reasons not to come. Distance, risk, politics. Reasonable reasons by most standards." "Reasonable maybe," Elena said. "But not right. There's a difference." Silence settled between them for a moment, comfortable rather than awkward. "Your reputation precedes you," Julie said eventually. "Deathworlders, survivors of a planet that tried endlessly to destroy you." Elena raised an eyebrow, mildly amused. That old nickname made it out this far. Old traders speak of it in quiet voices, some with fear, some with respect. I did not know which to believe until today. "For what it's worth," Elena said, "Earth wasn't kind to us. That part's true. Difficult weather, difficult diseases, difficult wildlife, and for a long time, we were difficult to each other too. But maybe that's exactly why, when we finally reached the stars, we understood something a lot of comfortable civilizations never had to learn. What is that? That surviving alone means nothing if you let others die when you could have helped." Julie studied the human captain for a long moment, then nodded slowly, as if something important had finally clicked into place. "I believe I understand now why the stories describe you the way they do." News of the rescue at Colony Station Vesa did not stay contained for long. Trade routes across the Outer Rim carried whispers first. Small fragments of information passed between merchant ships. A pirate fleet destroyed, a colony saved, a single human warship standing against 3 raider vessels and winning decisively. By the time the story reached the Trellin Assembly, one of the larger governing alliances in the region, the details had grown, as stories often do when passed from voice to voice. Some said the human ship had destroyed an entire raider armada single-handedly. Others said it had appeared out of nowhere, with no warning, no hesitation, simply arriving exactly when needed. Councillor Basari Thorne, an elder of the Trellin Assembly, sat in the Grand Council chamber, reviewing the incoming reports with a deeply thoughtful expression. Around him, other council members murmured among themselves, some skeptical, some intrigued. "This cannot be entirely accurate," said one councillor, a broad-shouldered Draylen representative. "One ship against 3 raider vessels. Unlikely." "The station's own logs confirm it," Basari replied calmly, scrolling through the verified reports. "Independent sensor data from 2 nearby trade vessels corroborate the timeline. It happened as described." "And this was the same alliance that our own council declined to assist only weeks ago?" asked another councillor, her voice edged with discomfort. "We deemed the risk too high." Basari did not answer immediately. He simply stared at the report in front of him, at the image captured by a passing trade vessel's sensors. The massive human warship standing guard over the battered colony station. Small rescue shuttles moving steadily between them. "It seems," Basari said finally, "that the humans did not share our concerns about risk." The chamber fell into an uneasy silence. "What does this mean for us?" the Dran representative asked. "For our policies going forward. It means," Basari said slowly, "that we may need to reconsider exactly what kind of neighbors we have gained out here, at the edges of known space. For a long time, we assumed humans were simply another struggling species, still finding their place among older, more established civilizations." He looked up at the gathered council, his expression serious. "I suspect we assumed wrong." Word of the rescue also reached less friendly ears. In a dimly lit command room aboard a heavily armored vessel far beyond Trellin territory, a tall figure studied the same reports with a very different reaction. This was General Threx, commander of a growing military faction known as the Korth Dominion, a power that had spent years quietly expanding its influence across the outer systems, absorbing weaker colonies one by one, always careful to avoid direct conflict with anyone strong enough to resist. Threx read the report twice, his expression unreadable. "One ship," he said finally, almost to himself. "One single vessel, and they destroyed an entire raider fleet without hesitation." His aide, a nervous young officer, shifted uncomfortably. "General, the Krath raiders were never a well-organized force." "Perhaps this was simply not minimize what happened," Threx interrupted sharply. "I have studied human history reports for years, gathering whatever fragments our scouts could obtain. Their planet was chaos, disease, disaster, layered upon disaster for thousands of years. And still they built starships. Still they reached beyond their solar system." He set the report down slowly, his eyes narrowing in thought. "We have expanded carefully into this region, precisely because the local powers were too cautious, too slow to respond, too concerned with treaties and committees to act decisively. That is why our conquest of these outer systems has gone unopposed." "And the humans, General, the humans," Three said quietly, "clearly do not share that same hesitation." He turned toward the star map on the wall, his gaze settling on the distant, quiet region, marked simply as human territory, an area his forces had always avoided, considered too far, too insignificant to bother with. For the first time, Threx wondered if that assumption had been a mistake. "Increased surveillance on human border systems," he ordered quietly. "I want to understand exactly what we are dealing with, before we make any further decisions regarding our expansion." Back aboard the Ares Fury, unaware of the growing attention their actions had drawn across multiple corners of the galaxy, Elena Cross stood near the observation deck, watching as the last of the rescue shuttles docked safely, carrying the final group of injured Vestal survivors aboard for treatment. Julie Cern stood beside her, watching the same view in comfortable silence. "What happens now?" Julie finally asked. "For my people, I mean. The station is badly damaged. Many of us have nowhere else to go." Helena considered the question carefully. "We'll stay in the area until repairs are stable, and your people are no longer at immediate risk. After that, I'll recommend to command that we open formal contact with your government, offer support in rebuilding, maybe discuss a longer-term arrangement if your people are interested. And if my people ask for nothing in return, if we cannot offer you anything of real value." Elena turned to look at her, her expression calm and certain. "Commander, we didn't come out here for payment. We came because you asked." Julie studied the human captain for a long moment, a small, genuine smile finally forming on her face, the first real smile since the attack had begun. "Then perhaps," she said quietly, "the galaxy has misunderstood your people for far too long." Elena's gaze drifted back toward the stars outside the viewport, toward the quiet darkness that stretched endlessly beyond the damaged station and the drifting wreckage of the defeated raider ships. "Wouldn't be the first time," she said. "Won't be the last either." Neither of them could have known in that quiet, peaceful moment just how far the news of Colony Station Vesa would travel, or how many powerful eyes across the galaxy had already begun watching human space far more closely than ever before. 3 weeks passed since the battle above Colony Station Vesa. The station itself had changed a great deal in that time, where broken metal once hung loose from shattered walls. New panels now gleamed under fresh lighting. Human engineers had worked alongside Vestal repair crews around the clock, rebuilding damaged sections, restoring power grids, and reinforcing the outer hull with stronger materials than the station had ever used before. Commander Uli Cern stood near the central observation window, watching as a small fleet of supply ships approached the station, escorted by 2 more human vessels that had arrived only days earlier. The Ares Fury remained close by, its presence now a familiar, comforting sight, rather than an unknown mystery. Torin walked up beside her, holding a datapad filled with updated repair schedules. "The East Wing will be fully operational by tomorrow," he said. "Farming Bay 3 is already back online. We'll have food production back to normal levels within the week. And the families who lost their homes. Temporary housing has been set up in the lower decks, thanks to the human relief teams. It isn't perfect, but it's warm, and it's safe." Julie nodded, watching the supply ships dock one by one. "It's strange," she said quietly. 3 weeks ago, I thought this station would become a grave. Now it feels more alive than it has in years. The whole sector has noticed." Torin said, "Other colonies have started reaching out asking questions. Some are even requesting contact information for the humans directly." Julie allowed herself a small smile. "Word travels fast, it seems. Faster than any of us expected." Word had indeed traveled fast, though not always in ways the people of Visation could see. Aboard his heavily armored command vessel, General Threx of the Korth Dominion studied the latest surveillance reports gathered from the border regions near human territory. For 3 weeks, his scouts had monitored human activity carefully, staying hidden, gathering whatever information they could. What they found had done little to ease his concerns. "General," his aide reported, standing stiffly at attention. "Scout reports confirm increased human naval movement along the border systems. 2 additional warships have been deployed to reinforce the Ares Fury's position near Colony Station Vesa." Threx studied the star map before him, his expression grim and their capital systems, their core territory, largely unchanged. "General, their response appears proportional. Not an overreaction, simply appropriate reinforcement." Threx's eyes narrowed. That single detail concerned him more than an aggressive escalation would have. An emotional, disorganized response would have suggested weakness, fear, uncertainty. A calm, measured, appropriate response suggested something far more dangerous. "Discipline. General," his aide continued carefully. "There is something else. Our scouts intercepted communication logs between the human warship and several neighboring alliances, including the Trellin Assembly. It appears the Assembly has opened formal diplomatic channels with human command." Threx's jaw tightened. For years, the Korth Dominion had expanded quietly through this region precisely because the local powers remained divided, cautious, and unwilling to unite against a common threat. If the Trellin Assembly and the humans formed a genuine alliance, his plans for further expansion would become significantly more difficult. "Continue monitoring," Threx ordered quietly. "I want to know everything about this species before we make any further decisions." His aide hesitated. "General, forgive me, but should we not consider withdrawing our forces from the contested border systems? If humans are willing to respond this decisively, for a colony with no formal alliance, no treaty, nothing to gain, we will not show weakness by retreating without cause," Thrace snapped. Then, after a pause, his tone softened slightly, more thoughtful than before. "But you raise a fair point. Perhaps direct conflict with this species would be unwise until we understand them fully. He turned back to the star map, staring at the small, quiet region marked human territory, an area his forces had always dismissed as insignificant. For the first time since beginning his campaign of quiet conquest, General Threx felt something unfamiliar creeping into his calculations. Caution. Meanwhile, aboard the Ares Fury, Captain Elena Cross had just finished a lengthy conversation with Fleet Command, relayed through several relay stations, due to the immense distance between her position and human territory. "They're pleased with the outcome," she told Marcus Reyes as she stepped back onto the bridge. "Formal diplomatic talks are already underway between our government and the Trellin Assembly. Seems our little rescue mission opened quite a few doors." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Not bad for an unauthorized detour outside our patrol boundary." Elena allowed a small, tired smile. Command's calling it a valuable demonstration of humanitarian capability and strategic reliability. Political language mostly. But underneath all that, I think they understand what actually happened out here. "And what's that, Captain?" Elena looked out at the repaired sections of Colony Station Vesa, through the main viewport at the human and Vestal engineers working side by side along the outer hull. "We showed up. Simple as that. Turns out in a galaxy full of careful alliances and cautious committees, simply showing up when someone needs help still means something." Her console beeped. An incoming transmission request from the station. She opened the channel, and Julius Kern's familiar voice came through. "Captain Cross, do you have a moment? There is something the Council would like to discuss with you if you're willing." "Of course, Commander. What's on your mind?" "The surviving Council members of Vesa Station have been in discussion since the attack. We would like to formally request an alliance, not simply a rescue agreement, but genuine ongoing cooperation between our peoples. Trade, shared knowledge, mutual defense where possible." Elena considered the request carefully. This was far beyond her authority to grant on her own, but the intention behind it mattered deeply. "I'll relay your request to Fleet Command immediately, Commander. Given recent developments, I suspect they'll be quite receptive." "Thank you, Captain." "Truly." Julie paused, then added, "May I ask you something off the record?" "Go ahead. Do you believe your people will continue responding to distress calls like ours, even after the attention this incident has drawn, even knowing it may create tension with larger powers like the Korth Dominion?" Elena didn't hesitate. "Commander, I won't pretend our leadership always agrees on everything. We argue, we debate, we have our disagreements just like any other species. But when it comes to ignoring someone in genuine danger, simply because helping them might be inconvenient or risky," she shook her head slowly, "that's not a debate we tend to have twice." There was a long pause on the other end of the line, filled with quiet, genuine emotion. "Then I believe," Julie said finally, "that the galaxy is about to change a great deal." "Captain Cross, maybe," Elena replied. "Or maybe it's just finally catching up to something that was always true." 2 days later, a formal ceremony was held aboard Colony Station Vesa to commemorate the survivors of the attack and to officially welcome representatives from Human Command for the beginning of alliance negotiations. Veset citizens gathered in the newly repaired Central Hall alongside human crew members from the Ares Fury and 2 additional support ships that had since arrived. Julie Cern stood at the front of the gathered crowd, addressing both her own people and the visiting humans, with quiet, steady confidence. "3 weeks ago," she began, "we sent a message into the darkness. Uncertain if anyone would ever receive it, uncertain if anyone would care enough to answer. We had been refused before. We understood painfully that hesitation and caution often outweigh compassion, even among civilized societies." She paused, glancing toward Captain Elena Cross, who stood respectfully among the human delegation. But the humans answered, not with careful diplomatic language, not with cautious committee reviews. They answered with a warship, arriving exactly when we needed them most, asking for nothing in return, except the simple hope that we were still alive to be saved. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the gathered crowd. "We have heard many stories about humans over the years," Julie continued. "Some called them dangerous. Some called them deathworlders, survivors of a planet that tried endlessly to destroy them. I do not know all the details of your history, Captain Cross, nor do I claim to fully understand your people after only a few weeks of contact." She turned to face Elena directly. "But I understand this much. When the galaxy turned away from us, your people did not, and for that, Our station, our people, and our future will always remain grateful." The crowd erupted into applause, both Vestal and human voices mixing together in genuine celebration. Elena stepped forward, addressing the gathered crowd with quiet sincerity. "On behalf of my crew, and of humanity as a whole, I want to say something simple. We didn't come out here looking for gratitude, or alliances, or political advantage. We came because someone asked for help, and we were close enough to answer." She paused, glancing briefly toward Marcus Reyes and the rest of her crew standing proudly nearby. That's really all it ever takes. Someone asking, someone answering. Everything else, the alliances, the treaties, the diplomatic relationships, that's just what naturally grows afterward. When trust is built the right way, one honest action at a time. Later that evening, as the ceremony concluded and the gathered crowd slowly dispersed, Elena stood alone on the station's newly repaired observation deck, staring out at the quiet stars beyond the viewport. Julie joined her after a while, standing quietly beside her in comfortable silence. "Counselor Basari Thorne, of the Trellin Assembly, has requested a formal meeting with your fleet command," Julie said eventually. "It seems our little rescue mission has caught the attention of quite a few significant powers across the sector." "So I've heard," Elena replied, "including some less friendly ones, apparently." Julie glanced at her curiously. "You've heard about the Corvette Dominion's interest as well. Fleet intelligence picked up increased surveillance activity near our border systems shortly after the battle. Nothing aggressive yet, just watching. Does that concern you?" Elena considered the question thoughtfully before answering. "A little, but not enough to change how we handle situations like yours. If anything, it just confirms something important." "What's that?" "That there are a lot of powerful forces out here who've built their strength by counting on everyone else's hesitation. Powers who've expanded quietly because weaker colonies had no one willing to stand up for them." Elena turned to look directly at Julie. "Maybe it's time that changed." Julie studied the human captain for a long, thoughtful moment. "You truly believe humanity is prepared for that kind of responsibility, standing against forces like the Corvette Dominion, simply because it's the right thing to do?" Elena looked back out at the stars, her expression calm, steady, and completely certain. "Commander, my people spent thousands of years surviving impossible odds on a planet that never once made things easy for us. We faced disasters, disease, war, and worse, long before we ever left our own solar system. If there's one thing history has taught us, it's that giving up, staying silent, or looking away when others are suffering, has never once been the answer." She paused, a small, determined smile forming on her face. "So, yes, Commander, I believe we're ready. Whatever comes next, far away, in the quiet darkness of unexplored space, more distress signals were already beginning to travel outward from struggling colonies, scattered across dozens of star systems. Colonies desperate for help, uncertain if anyone out there would ever answer their call. For the first time in a long while, many of those signals were no longer aimed solely toward the traditional powers of the galaxy. The large, cautious alliances, known for their careful hesitation and endless committee debates. Increasingly, they were aimed toward a small, quiet region of space that had once been dismissed as insignificant, a region now known throughout dozens of systems by a simple, respected name, human territory. Because word had spread quietly but steadily, from struggling colony to struggling colony, carried by grateful survivors and cautious traders alike. Other species send apologies, humans send warships,